want to share a very, very special topic.
Right.
That tends to be sort of like dismissed a little bit, but we want to talk about optimism today. And this is a key skill for top performers, for high achievers, for athletes. It's what's going to keep you motivated. It's going to help you through the difficult times. And what we want to talk about is optimism.
Right. So optimism, before we dive into it, let's make it clear of what we're going to really be talking about in this little vlog. So optimism can be something that is perceived as something gullible, naive. That is not the optimism we're going to be focusing here. We are going to talk about something called irrational optimism. So it's not taking it out of context. Life is hard, bad things happen, and that can sometimes makes us feel and puts us in a negative funk, and that's where we're going to need to sort of start going into this rational optimism.
So what's optimism? Optimism is actually the notion that something good will happen in the future, but it doesn't stay there. I know that something good will happen, so I'm acting accordingly. I'm working and putting effort towards that good thing happening. So that's the opposite of pessimism, right? And or what some people like to call it realism, being realistic, which is nothing good will ever happen. Nothing good will happen to me anyway, so I might as well just keep doing whatever I'm doing. So why is optimism so important? Optimism is what will keep you motivated and pushing through the difficult times. It's also a door to many other superpowers, or what's his name? Bert Jacobs, right? The creator of Life is Good.
Yeah, which is some kind of brand of clothes and t-shirts, which are really nice. If you don't know about them, I love them. A lot of the times you are going to see a dog in the shirt, and that's always very nice for me.
So he talks about these 10 superpowers that you get once you start being an optimist. And some of those superpowers include being a believer, which is core to optimism, right? Believing something good will happen. And by being a believer, you're already shaping or training your brain to expect something good happening. And we can go to all the neuroscience about how that works, but your brain, once you believe something, it's working towards making that thing happen, or towards finding the what's the word I'm looking for? Finding the evidence for it. That's right. It's a reticular activating system. Anyways, so that's one of the superpowers. Another superpower is simplicity, which I find so refreshing. But simplicity is focusing on the things that really matter, on who you love, on what matters most to you, and just devoting your life to that, and getting rid of the clutter of life.
Right.
Another of the superpowers
gratitude.
Gratitude.
Yeah, gratitude is just amazing. It's beautiful. It has shaped my life in tremendous ways. I had the luxury to go to India when I was training in psychiatry, and in spite of people there having really, really hard lives and living in tremendous poverty, this experience for me was so life-changing, because it showed me how these people are so resilient, and they practice a lot of gratitude. They are so grateful for everything they do. They give back to their communities, even though they might just lack of everything else. And these are superpowers that are given to you by using optimism.
So I also wanted to give you an example of why suffering is so linked to gratitude, and you can see through history, usually the people that are the most grateful are the ones that suffer the most. And you were talking about India, people being so grateful. So let's give an example here. If we go out for lunch and grab a sandwich, that sandwich might be a good sandwich. Maybe just like, okay, I'm eating a sandwich.
It's a sandwich, yeah.
But if you take somebody that's been in the hospital with a NG tube for 6 months, not being able to eat, and finally you give them a sandwich, that might be the best thing that happened to them that day, that week, even that month.
Yeah.
So gratitude is really linked to how you are experiencing something. And it can really make a difference.
So that is an example. everything really links together, right? So optimism, gratitude, happiness, joy, those are the super powers that you get access to when you practice optimism. And so, I mean, I was not born an optimist. I have been working on that throughout my, the past few years since I started doing all these on positive psychology and self-improvement and inner growth. So you have to practice it. Optimism is not going to come to you just naturally. You have to be present in the moment and mindful. And realize what you're really thinking at a given moment. So I'll give you an example. I used to run half marathons. My last half marathon was in November of 2017. After that, I had a series of bad events that happened in my life all through 2018. And so I just literally gave up on lifestyle of running, exercise, all of that stuff that I was doing and I was so passionate about. And then recently I decided to, hey, I need to go back to who I was because it really makes me feel completely different. And so I started working out again this week. And it has not been a very pleasant experience because I am so out of shape. I did 20 minutes and I couldn't even do half of what I used to do before. So there was a moment for me to practice optimism, right? So I could have chosen to be pessimist and said, hey, I'm older, I'm slower, things are going to be harder. Do I really want to do this? Or what I instead chose was, hey, this takes time, it takes effort. I was not born a half marathon runner. It took me a long time to get there, and I can do it again. So that is what really we want you to start practicing. This is the message we want to convey to you.
So optimism is trained by being more aware of the type of thoughts you're putting in your head, but also taking time to build positive thoughts. So there was a study looking at how to build optimism, and they took a group of people and asked them to, at the end of the day, before going to bed, write down 3 awesome things that happened that day. By the end of that week, the scores in optimism were ranking much, much, much higher. So the basic exercise of stopping for a few minutes, considering the awesome things that happened, writing them down, and just thinking about those awesome moments and being in the moment grateful for those moments help build optimism in this group of people. So that's another very simple exercise you can practice at home. Before going to bed, stop for a few minutes, be grateful for what happened that day, and find those 3 awesome things that happened that day that you can add into your journal. And that will slowly start building up your optimism. And one last thing, why is optimism so important for top performers? Because it will push your motivation when you cannot find it anymore. When life gets hard, when your energy is out, when you're down, optimism is the only thing that can keep you finding that extra motivation to keep going and keep pursuing your goals. So that's why it's so important to be really active in building it.
So if you ever surrounded yourself, or have you ever been part of like a sports team, you know that in the sports world, coaches focus a lot of their training in an optimism mindset. And I mean, even in the day-to-day life, right? If you surround yourself with people who are always putting you down and saying, oh, this is bad, they're all negative, they're going to put you down. If you start surrounding yourself with people who are optimists and positive, you will see how your life starts changing as well. So it is our responsibility, and it's also important for us to relate to people who have the same mindset, because again, we are part of society and we cannot do everything by our own. And so hopefully this brings you into awareness, this new concept of optimism. And if it sparks a light in you and you go and do more research and read more about it, wonderful. Or if you want to start practicing, then let's just dive in it and start doing it one day at a time. Be mindful, start being aware of your thoughts and using more of the optimism, rational optimism that we're trying to bring here to all of you.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Great.
See you next time.